You know, when you get to talk to people who are really passionate about what they're doing, well, that's what comes across in this interview that I did with Dr. Duncan Sutherland and Dr. Jessica Nelson at the Phillip Island Nature Park, where we talk about shearwaters and this huge migration that happens in about April, May every year. And the campaign that they ran, which was Dark Skies So Shearwaters Fly, and it incorporated the local community and a lot of great minds and a lot of hard effort just to make sure that these fabulous birds took flight and made their way all the way to the Northern Hemisphere in one single swoop. Enjoy.
Hi, with a flick of a switch, we turn night to day and day to night. We can change seasons, actions and states of mind. Light is everywhere, used endlessly and very much a part of our modern world. But what is it? How do we use it? And how is it changing our environment and our behaviours? A star-filled sky used to be our evening's entertainment. Now it's Netflix, iPads, or even a podcast. When was the last time you looked at the night sky? I'm Marnie Ogg, and this is Dark Sky Conversations, the podcast that brings people and science together to shed light.
Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or whatever time it is that you're listening to Dark Sky Conversations. I'm so excited to talk to my guests. Yes, plural guests today. The first time we've had two people to talk about their areas of expertise. And this time, and particularly around a campaign regarding shearwaters and dark skies. And I'm going to let them explain exactly all that, how that comes to be. But I might get you to introduce yourself first, Duncan. Duncan, you're Duncan Sutherland from, now, is it the Phillip Island National Park?
Phillip Island Nature Parks.
Great.
So I'm the Deputy Research Director for the Nature Parks, and have a background in short-tailed shearwater research, and a real passion for this species and how they interact in the world that we live in.
Your profile says that you're a modeller, a population modeller. Is that?
I have a background in modelling, so I've spent a bit of time looking at various populations. In fact, I started off with small mammal populations and trying to understand why they increase or decrease, what drives species and populations to change over time. And I've sort of switched over the years and expanded that to, I've actually worked a little bit on some of the predators that small mammals and other Australian wildlife are facing, particularly those pest animals.
Mm.
And I've even played around with some large lizards, predators, goannas and the like, and trying to understand how they work in our forested ecosystems. And then that's actually morphed a bit, and I've really started focusing over the last decade or so on island ecosystems. And seabirds are a critical feature of a lot of these island ecosystems, be they penguins, shearwaters, and various other small avian species, other birds, and really try to understand how island ecosystems work so we can deal with some of the threats that islands have unique features to them. They miss some elements of ecosystems, but they gain others. And the seabirds are a real feature on islands because we don't have as many predators on islands often. So it changes the dynamic there, which is really fascinating. It just being bounded by water or a barrier of some kind really changes how species operate. So fascinating to work out how islands work and how we can manage them as well as possible.
So just as you say that, I'm curious, because does that mean that if you change the ecosystem on an island, it's harder to, if we're impacting it, is it making a bigger impact or a smaller impact if you also don't have predatory species on there? That is a naive question.
No, it's not. It's a fundamental question really about how islands work, because we are missing some elements and because it is bounded, so it doesn't have the influence in the same way that mainland ecosystems do. So we don't have that continual sort of feedback or release of populations in the same way that the mainland does. So the fact that Phillip Island now is free of foxes, we've had foxes completely removed from the island, which is just an extraordinary feat. It's the largest island in the world that has had foxes removed from it. And that fundamentally changes the dynamic of the species that are present on the island. So we're trying to understand what the implications of that are and the opportunities that arise from having foxes removed. I mean, just think about the Australian native species that we have and how many are threatened by foxes. You can see some of the potential, particularly for threatened species. What a wonderful opportunity that is for those wildlife and for the community to embrace that, be part of that experience of yet again having our native species running around and being dominant in the system. It's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, well done in that achievement. That's fantastic. Yeah. So I'm going to introduce our second guest now, or get her to introduce herself, because I just love your blurb on the Island Arcs Symposium, which says Jessica McKelson swapped primates for penguins. And that seems like 180 degrees change in focus, but sounds like a marvellous one. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Jessica McKelson, I'm the Conservation Manager for Phillip Island Nature Parks. Primarily my role is around strategic development, making sure that our entire, land that we manage, is resilient and adaptive, and we have, the science and evidence that make sure that what we do is led very well, and the decision making that we make along the way protects not only our shearwaters and penguins, but the entirety of the habitat here. Yeah, a bit of a unique background. My background and passion is working with primates. I spent quite a bit of time overseas, up to 6 years, probably the last 25 years really working in Indonesia and around Southeast Asia, and really looking at different, once again, conservation models, the primate being the orangutan, with backgrounds working with great apes, and using them as a flagship species and how we can protect habitat, how we can, ensure that these populations survive long term, and how do we engage, more importantly, local community. I did work 6 years full-time, both in North Sumatra and Aceh, working with primates. Wow. And then I went to West Kalimantan, worked in swamp forest, and a bit of a change, and worked with the local community there against an illegal gold mining firm, and tried to give them their land rights back, which consequently 2 years when I was back in Australia, they did get that. So
fantastic.
Learned a lot of lessons, and I thought at the time that Australia really needs support. We have our own issues in land management. We have so many species that are going extinct or are threatened with extinction, and I really felt that what I've learnt with some of the best strategists and scientists internationally I could bring back here. So I did move from Indonesia back to Australia nearly 5 years ago, and I learned, was able to take on this opportunity and bring in, I suppose, a different direction that over the next 30 years we have something solid we can work towards and adapt and build resilience into what we do. And this is where we are today. And I must admit, at the time, I'm not the technical expert, and I certainly am not on penguins or shearwaters, but I have an amazing team like Duncan and the like that help guide me along the way and ensure that the direction that we can sort of work with our local community and ensure that, Phillip Island remains one of those key hotspots for wildlife, but also for our community to live with wildlife. So we're in a very unique position, and I'm quite passionate about that space.
I can hear that. Absolutely. Yeah. So tell me, either of you, Phillip Island Nature Park, and you just mentioned you got a 30-year program or plan to make this bring it rehabilitated, I guess, to some extent, and or maintain the areas that you tell me what that might include. But what makes Phillip Island so special? And obviously we're talking about shearwaters and eventually, but what else is there that we need to know about, preserve, protect?
I suppose we have the 4 largest populations of species that exist in the world that are currently overseen and managed. So we've got Australian fur seals, the largest colony of Australian fur seals, the largest colony of little penguins, the largest colony of short-tailed shearwaters, and more recently, the largest population of eastern barred bandicoots.
Okay.
So, you think about Melbourne, a city of over 4 million people, that, Phillip Island's only 2 hours away, and here we have this incredible ecosystem and species right on our doorstep. And a lot of people are unaware of that, and they come to the island for a number of events. One of the great things about the island is we have, one of the best surf reserves in the world. So we've got, so many exciting natural and man-made activities. We've got obviously the Grand Prix, and it's all on this little island, and surrounding that is this incredible ecosystem. And I think that's really special, and we're so lucky internationally to have that on our doorsteps.
I think it also is a space where all of these amazing things can happen. So we've got that island ecosystem, and we can manage that system quite closely and manage the threats to the wildlife. But the really important thing is we've got people living in this ecosystem. It's their backyards and their businesses and their farms and all of that. And we've got visitors coming as well. Over 2 million visitors would come each year, pre-COVID, of course, but it's this amazing demonstration site where people can experience what it's like to have wildlife around them in a really positive way, and engage with them and feel what it's like to actually have wildlife in their lives again. And it's a rare opportunity that we feel privileged that we could share.
I've just been writing a paper with the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance about the values of the night environment. And it's only something that we're really starting to tap into. And I think you've just described it perfectly, that it's, yes, okay, there might be an economic stimulus with tourism opportunities, etc., but there is that real beautiful quality that a community can share and be proud of their own backyard, literally.
Be proud of and have that ownership. I mean, it's theirs. It's their special place, a place that they have a real sense of place for, and they can experience that and share that love of that experience. It's pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about how the community got involved with this recent campaign and what you were aiming to achieve by talking about the migration of shearwaters and actually what the process is for the shearwater itself, what's happening over this time.
Yeah, all right. Well, maybe I'll start with what the shearwaters are doing, and then how that links in with the campaign, and they're obviously integrally linked. So short-tailed shearwater, for those who don't know what it is, it's a seabird. It's a bit like an albatross but smaller. It's a dark grey-brown colour with about a 1 metre wingspan, about 500 grams in weight. So it's a relatively medium-sized type of petrel.
Sadly,
it spends. They're actually not too bad. The distinctive flavour, and I can attest to that, having tried it. It's a traditional harvested product for the First Nations peoples in the region of the Bass Strait region in Tasmania. But it's our most abundant seabird as well in Australia. And what's amazing about it is it actually travels the globe looking for the most productive waters around the world. And so for that, it needs cold oceans, which are oxygen rich. And they need lots of light. And when you've got light and oxygen-rich waters, the waters are teeming with life, and that's what the shearwaters are looking for. Lots of, the small fish and the krill that these birds consume, they're looking for where that's most abundant in the world, and they've got an incredible ability to fly to find those rich waters. So in the southern...
Can I just ask, when you say light, do you mean light as in sunlight during the day? And they can, sorry, I just know nothing about oceanography really, or But are you saying that they need the daylight to find their, or is it that they're looking for it with moonlight and starlight, similarly to night?
No, I mean it's sunlight which provides the energy for the food supply.
Okay.
So we were just talking about the primary productivity of the oceans. So all the algae and things that grow in the oceans, just naturally, that's part of the ecosystem, which is the basis for the food chain in the marine environment. And so summer is going to be the best time to have the most light, of course. And so in the summer in the southern hemisphere, the shearwaters are down here. And when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, they switch ends of the globe and make this extraordinary migration, 16,000 kilometres to the other side of the world.
Something that we all would like during winter is to follow the sun.
That's right. They've got it sussed, haven't they?
Do they holiday on the way? Do they, they have to stop off shopping in Singapore and all the rest of it? Or no, it's quite seriously, do they? Or are they like an albatross that they can fly incredibly long, straight distance?
They can fly incredibly long. And we've been actually attaching tiny little tracking devices to the birds so we can follow where they've been. And what we can see from those trackers is that these birds are actually just making a beeline to the other side of the world. So they're not stopping anywhere along the way. In fact, maybe I can run through the year in the life of a shearwater.
Please.
So right now, the birds are actually on their migration to the Northern Hemisphere. So we're in mid-May at the moment, and that they're heading towards the Sea of Japan. That's their sort of first stop-off point. So, in fact, they haven't touched the water for most of that journey. They don't touch it at all. It takes them about 2 weeks to do that journey from the Southern Ocean, actually south of Australia, almost all the way down to Antarctica and heading up to the Sea of Japan. Then once they get there, some of them sort of spend a bit of time there, might be a few months. Others move immediately across to the Bering Sea and then up towards the Chukchi Sea, up into the Arctic Circle near Alaska. So, right up to the furthest point you can get to here, really. And they are going to be feeding up on the waters out there. So they actually sit on the water, sleep on the water, feed on the water. They don't have to travel too far once they found nice productive waters. And forage from where they are. But come the start of September, it's starting to switch from somewhere over there, and the days are getting shorter. And keeping in mind in the height of summer, they're having some days of just perpetual sunshine. So the night never falls from where they are. Yeah. But come the start of September, they in unison, really, it's really quite tightly scheduled. They make their way directly from the Bering Sea, from that area around Alaska, straight down to our shores around southeastern Australia. And they're coming down here to breed. So this is actually the only time when they arrive, it's the only time they actually touch land. The rest of the time, they're always out on the ocean, on the water.
Amazing.
So it is quite extraordinary. It's only the breeding birds that come and touch land as well. So they're coming to our shores. They build some burrows when they arrive. So they're arriving at the end of September, start of October. Start renovating burrows, finding their mates. You're getting them pretty cozy.
Do they mate for life, or are they a bit promiscuous?
They do have partners that they will mate with year and again, but they're not for life. They do swap partners around. We don't fully know what drives the change in partners, whether it's if they have a successful year of breeding, they might stay with that partner. But yeah, we haven't fully untangled that one yet.
Okay.
But they do spend a bit of time renovating burrows and pair bonding, doing all of that. By the start of November, they mate, and just after mating, they go off on what we call the honeymoon trip, and they all head south down towards into the Southern Ocean again, and to forage down there for about 2 weeks, going right down close towards Antarctica as far as they can get before they hit the ice and get too cold. And then come back to the end of November to lay their one single egg.
Wow.
So they only get one shot at breeding each year, one egg only. So if that goes wrong, then it's all over for the year and they have to wait for the next year. They don't have another shot at laying that egg.
And what's the percentage that that come out of the egg and they're all happy and healthy? Is it strong, or is it, are they a strong? Yeah.
It is generally pretty strong. So once that egg's laid, and so long as that's laid in the burrows, some of them unfortunately lay them on the surface, which is not ideal, and they're quickly picked off by various scavenging species. So that's a bit of a fail. Whether it's just a young bird that hasn't really been breeding much before, hasn't got much experience. We really haven't figured all that out either. But most of them will actually successfully lay that egg in a burrow. And as it turns out, the female that's just laid that egg, she's done a huge, energetic job there. It's a really big egg. It's about 85 grams in weight. So if you think about what a chicken egg is that you might get from the supermarket, it's a good size bigger than that for a bird that's smaller than a chicken. So, it's a big investment.
Yeah.
And she'll then nick off to go foraging again back down towards Antarctica.
Can't blame her, can you?
No, they don't kill her.
She needs a good
sit there in a hole another few weeks.
No.
Yeah.
But he does. So the male, he then incubates that egg for 2 weeks until she returns, and then they swap over, and they do that a few more times while that egg develops. And after about 53 days, that egg is ready to hatch. So we're talking mid-January. And then the chick actually grows really quite rapidly from that point. So for a week or two, they might protect that young chick, but thereafter both parents are going foraging down south towards Antarctica. And so again, they're spending 10 days to 2 weeks feeding down there and bringing back a really rich, oil-based food supply for their chicks. And the chick might only get half a dozen feeds or so, but after that, the chick's almost twice the weight of its parents. It's quite extraordinary. So it's about almost 1 kilo in weight.
Yeah, right.
Huddled in down, trying to keep you nice and warm. And most of those, the eggs reach the point of hatching, and most of those small chicks develop to the point where they're ready to fledge. The adults finish feeding the chick by the start of April. So all the feeds that chick's going to get, it's got by the start of April. The adults then head off actually head south, back down towards Antarctica to forage and feed up and fuel up for the migration they're about to attempt. And they leave the chick behind. The chick's left there for almost a month. No food. It's just there to convert all those oils and the rich food that has been given.
Their baby fat.
All that baby fat, so much baby fat. It's just extraordinary. And, fluffy grey down all over it. It's just
It
this
must look
puffball.
gorgeous.
Yeah, they're very cute. And they're calling the whole time for their parents and they're not there. You can hear them. Yeah.
The parents find it pretty tough, actually. I think they feel very harassed when the chicks are calling for food.
Yeah.
You can actually see the adults lining on the cliff edges, trying to keep their distance from the chicks because the chicks just, give me food, give me food.
Yeah, yeah.
But then by the end of April and at the very start of May, the chicks have converted all that fat into the muscles for flight, and they swap their feathers over from that down to the flight feathers, and they're ready to go. And they're, again, quite synchronised. At that time, that's the time of year that they all head off, but they're waiting for the right conditions as well, so that they wait until it's night time, so that all of the birds are coming in and out from the colony when it's at night, so they don't come in during the day. That's when they'll get picked off by predators, the birds of prey and gulls and ravens and the like. But the chicks are waiting for good strong winds, particularly ones from the west, to give them that lift to make that first trip on the epic journey they're about to undertake. So while the adults have headed down south, by this stage, the adults are again returning up the east coast of Australia, between Australia and New Zealand, heading up towards the Sea of Japan where we started, and those fledglings are going to join them on that trip north. So having not fed for probably a month, their first voyage is to go to the other side of the world. So quite extraordinary that they could do this.
And where have they done little flights around the backyard, sort of, so to speak? No.
Not really.
No, they attempt during the time before the high winds just to exercise their wings, and you might see them out and about, but no, they don't.
Isn't that amazing?
So
Yeah.
that first real trip, flying around is the very beginning of the next stop is the Sea of Japan. It's
Yeah.
You're listening to Dark Sky Conversations with Marnie Ogg. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
You said they were synchronized. I guess that's in their development. But do they also all just take off on the same night?
Pretty much.
It's not quite that synchronised. We used to say that you could set your clock by when the shearwaters would arrive from their southerly migration. The 26th of September is the day that they'll all return. It's not quite that tight. And as I was saying with the fledglings, when they're departing, they're waiting for the right winds to come along to give them that lift off. But it usually happens it's only a few nights in that period when you get the right conditions. So within a week, it's all pretty much done and dusted. And if they don't make that trip on those nights which are good, the conditions are right for them to go, then they'd miss the boat. And they become what is actually a really important food source for the native predators that come to and congregate to feed on these fledglings that are never going to make it.
Yeah, I suppose that's where we lead into probably, Marnie, about the campaign and what we've been able to do around our rescue.
Yeah.
And that it is obviously Duncan's explained that shearwaters are, quite rich and oily. So they are attracted to light, and during that time, so they are synchronised. So after Easter is when our team really starts to focus on how do we minimise the number of shearwater fledglings that are being striked by cars. Vehicles are our biggest risk.
But
Or attracted to.
Just catch you on that. You said Easter.
Yeah.
Is that because of the full moon, or is it?
No, it's just one of the timings that works well for us. That a lot of the tourists have left, and then we start to set up. Obviously, we know that it's just one of those points in our calendar that we know that it's time to start preparing for the fledglings to depart. So, they are attracted to light, and of course, light pollution is one of their biggest, one of the threats that they face on their journey. And one of the threats that, that they are attracted to in their immediate backyard where, they're obviously living is on Phillip Island. So what we do during this period of time is we set up some traffic management, and we know where the key hotspots are on the island. And we try to minimise the amount of strikes or clean up the roads. They are quite oily, so they are actually, number one, a threat to humans when they're driving because they provide like oily roads and it's actually quite dangerous. So our role during that time is to remove as many birds that are alive and give them a second chance by placing them back in the colony, or remove the dead roadkill that may happen during the evening. So we do that early morning and we do it during the evening as well. And this year is quite different because we were able to get some support to really maximise our opportunity to engage the community. And we have a very good community support in this program, but we wanted to really maximise it and get the community to own a lot more of, turning off their lights and participating in something that they can proactively do. And our goal was to get around 25 businesses to support in that flight migration path, to support turning off their lights for up to 10 days. And we were able to achieve 24 main businesses, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we had an online gathering, so this sort of perpetuated in results, like people would turn off their lights during that period of time. We had the schools across the island in the community, they'd go home and turn their lights off. So we think that all that, it does contribute to, giving that fledgling the best chance to go without any man-made light pollution as such.
So if there is light there, they're attracted to that, and they're not taking off on their longer journey, or
they're distracted by, say, for example, we have a bridge that connects us to mainland, and regional roads, Victoria. No, they give us permission to turn those lights off 10 days during that year, because they're attracted to that rather than following, obviously the sunlight, essentially.
Well, we don't really understand what it is about artificial light or light in general that is attracting them, but it does attract them to land on the ground, which is a terrible thing for a shearwater fledgling to do. It's really needs to be heading off on its migration.
Yeah.
But by landing on the ground, that's in areas, it's associated with roads often because of street lights, car headlights, but building lights, of course. So particularly those big flooded areas on buildings that might be there for the safety of humans, but it's certainly not for the safety of wildlife. And I think that's where this campaign's fantastic, is that it's making people aware that we're sharing this landscape with these special birds, and they can do their part for that. It's only a short period of time, but really see the benefit that they can give the birds by turning those lights off at this vulnerable time for the birds.
And I think, Marnie, even though we do have a large population of shearwaters, it doesn't mean that this population won't crash in the future. And, we've got to do everything we can as we evolve and live with wildlife. We also have to understand what some of those, more localised threats might be. And we have an opportunity to change and participate and make a difference. So whilst people think, turning my lights off, that's not going to contribute, it may contribute, and it's that one thing that everyone can do proactively to try and, over 10 days in the year, try and support, the best opportunity chance for these fledglings to go. So what we've done this year with our campaign is be able to measure that, and we hope in the future to continue this and broaden the depth of this program, to other communities that are interested in getting involved as well up the East Coast and down on the island. We believe light pollution is a threat for not only shearwaters but other wildlife species, and we want to do the best that we can for this species to exist with us into the future.
And I guess on top of that, it's actually one thing that we can quite easily do. It's a very tangible thing that it's not hard to fix, is it?
No, it's one of those things that, you know, I do a lot of public talks to schools and special interest groups, and I talk about, you know, how do we solve the issue of light pollution, and, you know, really the stitch is turn the light off.
Yeah,
but,
it's just that.
But people, and you might go into talking about colour temperature and curfews and all the other bits and things that actually make it more human centric and not easy to include. Mm. But I often think that people think it's just too easy. You know, they want me to go into a more in-depth way of doing it, and it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, we've also, you know, been able to, you know, work with our local councils and our road authorities to put in, like, you know, wildlife-friendly light, which is kind of low light pollution level lighting and stuff across the island. So I think as a community, we're doing so much, and we're a great example. And you know, this is the next step, this campaign, to really say that you can make that difference towards that. And when you walk out at night time, when there's no lights on, especially for the rangers that are going around patrolling and making sure, you know, picking up birds, they thought it was fantastic. They're like, it was dark, it's beautiful. Yeah. And I think just appreciating that you can, you know, step outside and see that, and, you know, that we have an amazing place where without lights, that it actually is quite beautiful.
Yeah. So that makes me think of two things. One is, actually three. I'd love to hear the feedback from the general population and actually see that documented, so that, you know, you're capturing that. Because if it's anything like the experience that we ran a Guinness World Record challenge where we asked people to go out and stand on their veranda at night and turn all the lights off. And we had pages of people writing to us saying, I've never done this before. I've never stood outside and looked at the stars with my child. You know, my child and I were crying. It was so beautiful. You know, all these sorts of comments. And I think that experience of being in the night is really valuable learning. And I guess that sort of then takes me on to, because I know we've got a shearwater colony not far from where I live, and there's Lord Howe Island and all these other areas. How can we use your model with those communities to broaden this? Have you got any plans for that, or are you know, is it just is Phillip Island enough?
Oh no, we are planning on providing a report that will be, you know, open, and obviously for everyone that wants to get involved with this campaign, it'd be fantastic. You know, we've run it the first time this year. Even though we've done so much stuff previously, it's the first time we've really engaged with community and got some baseline data, essentially. And we're able to marry that up with our rescue program. And what we hope to do is influence and extend that. So we're more than willing to share that data, and also, you know, build upon that with other experience that other communities may have. It would be fantastic to see the Australasian community get involved with this program, and obviously other shearwater colonies, you know, get those communities to get involved as well. It was so easy. We're happy to look at those opportunities to partner with like-minded communities that have shearwaters in their backyard and share and grow together.
Yeah, I think that's the key to all of this. We can't do it in isolation. You know, it's a globe. So.
It is, and I think it also, you know, each community has its own approach to doing things too, but that each of the communities can have that ownership of how they want to go about this. We can have a framework of, you know, how we've gone about it. It's an example of how it can be done, and it can be done, you know, really easily.
It was easy.
And, you know, really successfully. But in other communities can see it's not that tricky.
So I guess I do have another question though, and where I was heading in my mind was with safety. You know, that we've always got this argument, well, we need light for safety, or perceived safety anyway. So I guess my question's two parts. One is there any evidence to say that there was more or less crime over this period? And the other bit was, how did you have to persuade the local community to turn lights off? Was there a pushback around that? You know, we've come used to having light in our environment.
I suppose we don't have any evidence on crime about the lights,
Or
but we
safety
certainly,
generally.
but we certainly had a very positive uptake that people were, you know, participating in this campaign. So we were thrilled. Actually, it exceeded my expectations and a lot of the other expectations from our team. So in terms of crime, I can't answer that one, but we did get a lot of positive feedback around this program. And then the second question was in relation to,
Initially, was there any pushback from people saying, "Oh no, we've got to have our lights on. You know, we can't.
No, we had a very and I think that comes in because we do educate the community. I know Duncan does a lot of keynote talking, and we put out localised press releases around shearwaters, and people do live with this species. They can go for walks and see their burrows quite easily, so they are aware. It's not it's not something that they are not aware of, and they do know. Being that our road authority also for the last 5 years since I've been here have been really proactive in turning the bridge lights off for this period of time. So we've already had that, I suppose, continuity and support. It's more extending that, and I think people are just really excited to do something and get involved with the species.
One of the challenges hasn't so much been people not wanting to turn lights off. I think there has been that, this is something I can do. This is tangible. It marries up with how special I think the birds are in this landscape. Probably more the challenge has just been the systemic nature of it. We have lighting set up in certain ways, and for some places, it's actually just difficult to get that changed. And it requires an electrician to come in. We just haven't set it up in the first place to make it easy to adapt. And, just from first principles, when you're developing a site, a building, just having it easy enough to turn these things off with the flick of a switch, that's actually been more of a problem than people's desire to turn them off.
Yeah.
And, which was a fascinating thing for me to observe.
Yeah, I know I was the manager of Sydney Observatory for a while, and part of my role was to talk about lighting management of new buildings particularly, or if there was a change of sign. And, of course, every new building that went up had a new and bigger, brighter LED wattage. And the request to have the capacity or ability to turn it down or off was incredibly hard.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
if you did have it, you still you might have somebody in the building that knows that for 3 years, and then they move on, and that intellectual property on where that light switch was seems to go with them. So
it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in terms of overall, we're really happy with what we've been able to achieve. And at the end of the day, it's not just for shearwaters, it's for other wildlife and species as well. So I think during that 10 days, I think all wildlife got to feel like what it was like not to have lights on in some of their key prime habitat areas.
Yeah.
So that's, it's something that we take for granted. And I think it was a really great way to engage and bring the community to own our backyard.
Be really
And to own
interesting to
our
see if you
backyard
could
thing.
extend that period to have it more frequently through the year or at other times, just to and once you change a few habits, it's easy to adopt and adapt.
And as we were saying, it's great for people to experience what a dark night actually feels like, and then get to see the stars in full glory. I think we're very privileged where we are that we do get some spectacular nights when the stars showing off, and that's something that those 10-day periods just to be able to see what that looks like and experience areas where it is just dark and it's invigorating.
We should really be inviting people down from Melbourne during that period to experience it too. So it's
or wherever. Great. I think the high winds also influence people staying indoors, which has been great too. that kind of works well. But yeah, it's certainly an experience. I know that our team, we have teams patrolling through for 2 weeks, 3 weeks over that period. So just making sure that the roads are safe for people to drive on and people slow down, and that we have an opportunity to collect the birds before they become roadkill. And that's a lot of people think that we're doing it from animal welfare. That is one part of it, but the main part of why we do it is road safety. It's and also if you leave a lot of roadkill in areas that are don't have foxes, for example, it provides an enticing food source for foxes to come over and also feed. So we want to make sure that we clean up these areas to stop any predators as well. So, and at the same time, try to save as many birds as we can.
Yeah.
Give them that second chance to make that extraordinary maiden voyage that they undertake.
I think that's a wonderful note to end on. And I hope we've covered everything, and I really look forward to seeing this campaign going on again next year. Please get me involved. Let's see if we can get some people involved as well and share this around. And thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
It's been a pleasure, Marnie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.